Humans have physical limitations, and we know this instinctively. If someone has a race or competition coming up, we know to suggest to rest up. If someone is tasked with running a marathon, we know that we can't just tell them to tough it out. Anytime a challenge is coming, someone will tell you, try to go to sleep early the night before. It's like we can imagine tangible sweat, toil, and effort from a physical act, and thus understand it. The physical body will break down at some point, perhaps later than you might expect, but it's not without limits. But when it comes to our mental abilities, most of us tend to ignore the concept of limitations. You'll hear such things as mind over matter, or just use your willpower, as if the brain is capable of perpetual motion without a break. While these sayings are helpful in the context of motivation and the cultivation of self-discipline, they must be qualified when we consider the goals of this book: mental agility, smarter thinking, and insightful analysis. Most people, teachers, professors, and authors alike, want to push the notion of the unlimited mind. But from my perspective, it's more important to first understand how the mind is limited, and thus how we can work with the inherent limitations we are facing. Let's consider the example of Devin. Devin loves to procrastinate, and he's been this way since he was a child. He blames his love for video games, which has resulted in unhealthy weekends where he barely leaves his home, subsiding only on Cheetos, Mountain Dew soda, and whatever else is on hand to eat. This habit followed him into college, and then his career as a marketing analyst. He routinely pulled all-nighters to finish his tasks and assignments, often taking the next few days to recover and chip away at his accumulating sleep debt. His routine involves staying up until 4 a.m. and waking up at 7 a.m. After a time, the quality of his assignments and reports begins to suffer at his job. He starts getting negative reports of his lack of energy and engagement in the office during the day. To compensate, he spends even more late nights trying to polish his work. But that just leads to more overall fatigue without an improvement in the work quality. Devin's story culminates when he is driving to work one inauspicious Tuesday morning and hitting a police car because he is so drowsy. It's a stark illustration of our mental limitations. We would never recommend that an athlete partake in a training schedule like Devin's, but we fail to consider the impact it has on our thinking abilities. Smart thinking, though it may not always seem like it, correlates directly with our physiology and how optimized the rest of our bodies are. If you view the human body like a machine can't function properly without sufficient fuel or with a single faulty component. Smarter thinking does not equal harder thinking. Thus, this first chapter on mental agility and thinking smarter is about the preconditions to doing so. How we must nurture our bodies in order to nurture our brains. In order to think at our sharpest, we need our bodies to be at their healthiest. If you want to get right down to the nitty-gritty details of how to think smarter and view the world with a different lens, you can feel free to skip this chapter, but I wouldn't recommend it. This chapter gives an overview of the complex machine that is the human body. The first step to harnessing your brain for mental agility is to understand the circadian rhythm that governs our daily energy. Circadian rhythms. If you don't have energy, you won't have the will to even attempt to think smarter. You will be stuck in bed eating ice cream and reverting to the path of least resistance, which is lazy and surface thinking. Energy is the most important part of maximizing your thinking abilities and alertness. Just as a track athlete needs adequate sleep and nutrition before a race, you need energy for any degree of insight. From a biological standpoint, each person has a finite amount of energy available on a daily basis. So understanding your body's rest and wake cycles will help you understand how to allocate your mental energy.